Today's episode is an important one. We were both pharmacists and we knew what the pandemic did for the profession and to the profession.
Ugh, this is why I knew I needed like a tissue because, yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the HeyRx Friends We Got This podcast, where we share our thoughts on the pharmacy profession, experiences as healthcare providers, and exploring our identities as two women of color, going after it all.
As we share our stories, we hope you laugh, maybe cry, and feel inspired as you get to know us. At the end of the day, friends, we got this.
Yes, I forgot. Oh, no. I forgot to say it with you.
What? Oh.
Didn't you? Didn't you say that there was somebody that lives for that?
Yeah, they like, we got this. I'm like, what? Wait, what? I even missed it that you didn't say it with me because I'm still in my head.
Well, I know, me too. I'm like looking at the chat box to see
know.
what's next. It's okay.
Oh,
but hello, everybody. My name is Thu.
Hi, everyone. This is Sally. We did it.
We introduced ourselves.
We introduced ourselves at the correct and most opportune time today.
Exactly.
Very exciting.
Something that I noticed about Sally is that when I edit you, or just our clips in general, like sometimes you speak so fast. And then sometimes you speak so slow.
Oh.
But when you speak fast, it's like really fast. And I literally one time was like, did I speed it up by accident? Like, how did that happen? But you just know exactly what you're going to say. And you're like a robot.
And so like, usually people's facial expressions tell me that I'm going really fast. So even when I teach, I tell students, if it starts to sound like I'm rapping, stop me. Because it just means like I'm in a trance. Like the thoughts, they're so clear. I know what I want to convey. And that's what it is.
But it's funny because when I do that, I watch it back and I'm like, wow, I'm just rambling. But when you do that, it makes sense. That's why I'm like, her brain is like functioning so fast. It's a marvel.
It's terrible. And then when I'm also talking slow, that cadence usually is because of emotion. I'm either really, really angry and I want to mince my words, or I am stopping myself from crying. So I'm just going really, really slow, acknowledging that I'm feeling things, but this needs to come out, and it needs to come out in a coherent way instead of that. Instead of that.
I 100% understand.
I need to breathe through the emotion and get this out. And today's episode may be a lot of slow.
Yeah. Maybe I will have to speed you up through post production. Like, okay, we gotta speed it up, Sally. And like you become little chipmunks because that's what happens.
Little chipmunk. Today.
What are we gonna talk about today? This is something that Sally's been wanting to do since like months
episode
ago.
1. Episode Truly. 1. And I love that you're obliging me with this one because there's one more you owe me. It's what's in a name? What's in a name, Thu? We're going to get that Sally. Done.
Excuse me, but I'm pretty sure I reminded you that we need to do that one. And you're like, oh, I already forgot about that.
I forgot about that. Like, what's in a name? We that was owe our listeners that one too. But today's episode is, here comes the slow, but it's an important one, I think, for Thu and I, for very, very different reasons. And that perspective is what I really wanted us to capture, because I don't believe it is one that's been discussed enough, talked about enough, and or we've even had first-person accounts of that. We were both pharmacists and we knew what the pandemic did for the profession and to the profession and how it affected us both as pharmacists. But this episode, I want to hear from Thu about her experience with the pandemic. When we talk about, and when I say the pandemic, um, everybody listening is going to know that I am talking about the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hopefully.
um, yeah, right. Obviously, I'm talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. There it was an interesting time to be alive, but I'm very interested in knowing and having to tell her story today about how the pandemic happened for her to her and how she's existed as a woman of color, a woman of Asian descent since that time. And I'm going to do my best to let you tell your story today completely uninterrupted. Even though at times I may straight up just completely lose my ish.
I mean, so the pandemic has really affected both of us in very interesting ways. And I think that is why this episode is going to be really fascinating for me too on your end, because not just the aspect that you really went through some tough health scares in that year, which is like one of the worst years to have any kind of health scares.
Yeah.
But also the race component of it too for both of us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be an interesting one. And I've always I hesitate to do this episode, not necessarily because of anything negative. And look at me, I'm talking slow too, but it's because truly I think it was traumatic for
I'm
for
sure.
me. Um,
I'm sure.
and I like, yeah, it's traumatic. And I don't know what kind of emotion is going to come out of this one
Absolutely.
because I even tried talking to my therapist about it once.
Yeah.
And, sometimes therapists are hit or miss. And
Yeah.
I don't think that she fully comprehended what I was trying to tell her, which is I'm like, I think I was traumatized by this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
When,
I've really just kind of put everything in a box and really stored it away. And it doesn't affect me on a day to day. But when I do bring it back out,
yeah,
it's the memories are just so intense sometimes. Yeah.
I'm sure. And that's why I am grateful that you agreed for us to do this because I think it's going to be hard, but you're a badass. You do hard things. And but this is a different version of hard. And so I don't want to just have us do this and not acknowledge that this is taking a lot of courage and strength for you to revisit these. I want to start with, when did it first hit you that something big was happening? Like,
Mm,
this is different from H1N1. This is different from even when Ebola came to the
mhm,
US. When did you have the realization that this is different and this
mhm.
is big?
Yeah, I mean, this was when the news first came out that something really big was happening. It was probably February 2020. And
Yeah.
I was supposed to go to France in May. And so we had a whole trip planned. Thank goodness we hadn't bought our tickets or anything like that. Oh no, we did buy our tickets and then we had to get that refunded. Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Completely blocked that out too. Um, but and it's funny because in the beginning of it all, I remember going on a hike with a friend and we're like, oh, the media is just blowing this out of proportion. I'm sure a lot of people went through that.
Yeah.
But I think it was when we saw what was going on in New York
Yeah.
that we realized this is something else, something much bigger. And yeah, I think that was probably when I
Mm.
realized. But
Okay.
um, what's really interesting too is just how people deal with that kind of information. There was a lot of
Mhm.
people that didn't believe in it, don't
Yeah.
agree with it, and all that. But
Hmm.
I worked in the hospital, so it had to be a different perspective of how we're going
Correct.
to handle something like this. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
What about you?
It was different for me because I didn't follow the news as closely. most of the information I was receiving about it was from work. So the
Mm.
work alert, the health alerts that were coming through work is how I was following it. But perspective, right? I am West African, and endemic diseases that become pandemics in those countries
Mm.
are not new to me. The anxiety that I had around it wasn't much in the
Mm.
beginning because I'd survived an endemic pandemic cholera outbreak when I was in Guinea as a child. I saw that completely just ravaged half of my neighborhood.
Wow.
And I saw the precautions that my parents had to take to protect us and make sure that we were safe and that nothing happened to us. And so in my head, I am in the United States of America. If
Mm.
there is a place that is equipped to keep anything from getting out of control, I'm in the best place in the world to
Mm-hmm.
deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a very different response to the
Mm.
news. I wasn't scared. I was very calm about what was coming out, but recognized that something big was happening. But I felt like I would be safe. I would be safe and I would be okay, which makes this next part really difficult as things started to unfold.
Yeah.
So I was on dialysis at the time of the pandemic. I started dialysis back in March of 2019. So when this thing hits, I am a year into peritoneal dialysis. I do dialysis at home at night. So I work all day and I come home and I treat for about 10 hours overnight. So infection control. This is like, I am at risk for anything because also as a person who was waiting for an organ, getting an infection, if an organ became available, I would not be a candidate to receive that. So they talk to us constantly, hand washing, wearing a mask before anything. If you work in an area where other people are sick, you need to work somewhere else, or you need to wear a mask and you need to. So I'm aware of what to do to protect myself. Again, really low anxiety. I'm educated about what I need to do to protect myself. I don't need to worry about this thing. They're going to do the right thing to contain this thing quickly and not have it get out of hand. So my initial position and posture around everything was that, right? So for you, at what point do you start to realize that it's not just happening around you, but things are happening to you now?
Mm-hmm.
Like walk us through like that part of how do we go from something big is happening, it's in New York, like we're in Arizona right now, like there's going to be a plan, they must have a plan.
They don't freaking have a
until,
plan. Did not.
until it's like we don't have a plan.
I mean, the plan was essentially to social distance and wear a mask
Yes.
because healthcare providers were not given much guidance in terms of how to actually treat this thing. So it's better to prevent than actually have the disease. Whether or not social distancing and wearing a mask was 100% effective, that could be up to debate. But really, it makes sense for you to just stay put and stay home. But I understand too, at that time, it was just rough for everybody. Not just the social aspect, but financial aspects of it. That was probably
Yeah.
such a scary time for people. But working in the hospital, especially in Arizona, we saw what was going on in New York. And so, what the initial plan was to empty out the hospital, allowing the beds to be available so that when the waves hit us, that it was going to be available for the people who need it.
Yeah.
And it was just so interesting because I think it was around March, April that we were emptying out the hospital and people were told not to go in the hospital unless you really have to.
Mm.
And let me tell you, walking through the hallways in the hospital that's pretty empty
Empty.
was probably one
Eerie.
of the most creepiest, most
Yes.
eerie thing, but you
Yeah.
also have this idea that something is coming towards us.
Yeah.
It's almost like, if I can imagine it and describe it, it almost feels like a swarm of bees, but they're not bees, they're like infection. A
Yeah.
swarm of COVID is flying, it's coming towards us. We
Yes.
don't know when, we don't know where, we don't know
Yeah.
how, we just know that it's coming.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting in a hospital that's quiet, and it's just like, when is it happening?
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the most eerie thing that I've ever experienced in that hospital.
Yeah.
And then the interesting thing was that nothing happened for several months. And so what ended up happening was, because surgeries were halted,
Yeah.
everything was put on hold, the hospital was starting to lose money. And so then we began to go through a long process of figuring out furloughs and
Yeah.
who's going to lose our jobs.
Yeah.
And I remember getting in an elevator with a doctor, and he full on was like, yeah, things are not looking good. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep this job. So it went from, let's prepare for this big emergency that never came.
Mm.
And now we're looking at losing our jobs because of the precautions that we had. And that in itself was such a rough time, because
Yeah.
none of us have really ever experienced
Sad.
that kind of instability in our careers before. So that
Mm-hmm.
was really scary. And then it was just so unfortunate that when people were being furloughed, when hours were cut, was when we got our first big peak.
Yes.
And it was
Ugh,
just the most unfortunate situation.
it really was.
Um,
It's
so, but that's not even, none of that's like the most painful for me,
yeah.
honestly. Talking about just the clinical aspect and like the patient care and all of that itself. It almost felt like we were just not prepared. Like, mentally, we were not
Yes.
prepared for anything
Mm.
like that.
Yeah.
We were not, it felt like we were truly on a battlefield
Yeah.
of something that was invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told Sally I was going to read lyrics to a Taylor Swift song, which is the
Yeah.
most cheesy
It's
thing that I
not.
can ever do.
It's not. It's really not. I don't know why she keeps setting it up like it's gonna be this cheesy
everybody
thing.
everybody like
It's
curls up and cries to Taylor Swift lyrics, which I definitely did. But at the
yeah.
time, Taylor Swift had released an album called Folklore.
Mm.
And the song on this album that made me cry the most is called Epiphany. So I'm just going to read the lyrics, but this is okay, just a little bit nerdy, Taylor Swift nerdy facts.
It's
But I believe this
deep.
is the 13th song on the album, which means that it's a very meaningful song to her. And
Mm.
typically on the Folklore album, she dedicated this song to her grandfather who fought in a war.
Mm.
And I love her ability to connect um like fighting in a war with what we were going through. So let me just read the lyrics, and I
Okay.
want you to react to it.
Yeah.
But so it goes like this. So it says, the first verse is, keep your helmet, keep your life, son. Just a flesh wound, here's your rifle. Crawling up the beach just now, sir, I think he's bleeding out, and some things you just can't speak about. And the chorus goes, with you I serve, with you I fall down. Just
Oh,
like, I always get so emotional like reading these lyrics, but
it's okay.
um
Oh, yeah.
I always get
Oh,
emotional. I'm sorry.
it's
But
okay.
yeah, so I'm gonna keep going. Um so it goes, watch you breathe in, watch you breathe out. Something oh yeah. And then it goes to the second verse. It says, something med school did not cover. Someone's daughter, someone's mother. Hold your hand through plastic now. Doc, I think she's crashing out. And some things you just can't speak about. Like,
Oh,
uh, this is why I knew I needed like a tissue, because yeah, I don't know.
it's
I don't know. What do
okay.
you think about that though? Like,
No, but and I think like also the irony of her writing that and how on it, that's dead on. People were dying in the hands of strangers. They couldn't even be with their families at all. So when I would always find people were like, oh, it's not real, it's just a government propaganda. And I'm like, I witnessed a family of seven come in together and only one person was discharged. Everyone else in one family died. That's not something I heard about. That's something that I witnessed. This happened. I don't think that your reaction to this, like, I don't know why you keep apologizing for it, because I think sometimes we know how we feel, but then we don't necessarily know how to express how we feel. And then someone expresses it for us. And it's just like, yes, that's it. That's what I feel. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. I think the part that is the most emotional for me reading those lyrics and thinking about like kind of why I get so emotional thinking about it. I mean, I did used to like listen to this song and just cried. And
Yeah.
I'm not even reading the full lyrics because I feel like I'm just gonna like keep bawling.
You,
But the
uh,
part with you I surf, with you I fall down, and that part is so emotional for me because like we talk about healthcare providers being such a unique group of people in the community. And you have no idea the amount of people that truly stepped up when
yeah.
that this was happening.
Yeah.
The amount of so we quarantined most of our COVID patients in one unit initially, and then it just became like the whole hospital basically.
Hospital.
But
Yeah.
initially we had doctors and nurses that were like, okay, well, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm single, I'm not going to bring this back to my family.
Yeah.
I volunteer to step in and
Yeah.
manage these units, and there are nurses that were just so brave and doctors that were just so brave
Yeah.
who didn't know exactly what they were getting themselves in. But you can imagine when you think about who's going to take care of these patients, we don't know the like how deadly this thing is going to be. We don't know how to treat it.
No.
And you may bring this back to your family. Like
Family.
there were people that stepped up and said, we're going to serve. We are going
Yeah.
to serve this community. We are going to protect and serve. And like
I'm
for
sorry.
me, I know, like for
It's
me, that's the most
hard.
amazing thing that I've ever seen in
It is.
humanity.
I know.
I'm crying for humanity. I'm not
I
really
know.
crying because of anything that was bad that happened to me, but it was just the beauty of it, the
Things.
pain of it.
Yeah.
But for members of healthcare to step up and said, I'm going to protect our community, there's a degree of this feeling that we have in terms of like a duty that we have for our patients
Yeah.
and the community. Those are the members that will continue to be in healthcare for a long time.
For a long
And
time.
it's terrible that the system itself is breaking down healthcare providers, but
Mhm.
we were meant to serve our communities. That's what we
Jeez.
wanted to do.
Oh.
And yeah, it really showed through. Truly angels of
Yeah.
of society. You
Yeah.
know. But yeah, I think that was the most pain that I felt when, of course there were people that denied what was happening. That was very
Yeah.
painful because
Right.
that's not what you're seeing in the hospital. But what was also really painful was um like yeah, the risk that people were putting themselves in. And then
Mhm.
of course the most painful thing too was the government and the
Mhm.
response to this
To this.
thing. There was
Yeah.
such a failure
Yeah.
on how much and or the lack of support that was placed on healthcare providers.
Mhm.
We didn't have equipment. We didn't have enough masks. We didn't have enough gloves, whatever. I think it was mainly the mask. But
Yeah.
at one point, we didn't have enough ventilators.
Yeah.
And we were like, do something, like
Yeah.
help us.
Yeah.
And nothing was being done except for just arguing all day long.
Yeah.
I'm also
Yeah.
disappointed in the CDC looking
Yeah.
back. They had such a lack of their ability to communicate with the rest of the world, bringing people together. Like, could you,
Yeah.
as leaders, bring people together and just like figure this out?
Yeah.
Let's not have so much contention about what's going on. But there was just so much like debating and arguing and denying, and
Yeah.
we're in the hospital like
Hospital.
fighting
Meanwhile,
a completely invisible enemy that
enemy.
yeah, like it shouldn't
Yeah.
have been so contentious. It really
They
shouldn't.
shouldn't
And
have.
I feel like they failed us on so many
All
levels.
levels. They did. They did. And the effects of this thing it's going to be felt for a really, really long time to come. Like, like I was telling you, for me, I wasn't necessarily afraid. Keep in mind, at that time, like we didn't have a kid yet. It's just me and my husband.
Mm.
My husband was a CVS pharmacist. He was going into work every single day, petrified that he would bring this virus home to me. There's no vaccine yet. A treatment modality, we have no clue yet how this thing even gets treated. And from everything we are reading, my chances of contracting this virus and surviving it, it's non-existent. Like I have no chance against this thing if I was to contract it. But he was expected to work. He made a commitment to his community and his patients that he would show up and he would serve them. And so he went to work every day, and we had to make a plan. And from the time the pandemic broke out until I think it was, I think it may have been for the first month or so, we had a laundry basket in the garage. He literally came upstairs in his boxers. He just stripped everything down in the garage, upstairs, straight to the shower before he could come to any common area. And then it's Clorox wipes and Lysol everywhere you've touched since being home.
Yeah.
I was confined to our home until there was a vaccine. So that is from March until about November or so. I went nowhere. I think my dog was tired of walking because taking him outside was my only
Yeah.
outside time.
That's
I couldn't go
horrible.
anywhere.
Mhm.
And the mental state that took um, on me, if anyone knows me, you know that I'm about my brunch with my friends, time with my niece, time with my sisters. None of this was happening. None of this, like, because the dialysis center called me and said, you need to stay home. We will give you a note for work. Work had no plan on how I would work remotely. There was no plan
Of course not.
at all. So I'm at home for at least 3 or 4 days while they figure out a plan. And then furlough comes down, but
That
it's like,
happened to you guys too.
yeah. But in all of this, it's just the toll that it took on him because every single day he'd just be like, I just don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do this without putting you at risk. Right. And I think that piece of it, I don't know that people understand that piece of it as much, that like the battle between the commitment that I've made to my patients to be a person that is going to jump in when there's a crisis, and the person that I love, to think that each time I fulfill that responsibility, I'm putting at risk the person that I love. Um, so it was hard on us, but I think because I'm also a healthcare provider, I understand where he's coming from, because if I had my health, I would be out there. I would have gone to the hospital. But I think that the emotional part of it was that our marriage was different because we're sitting in different couches watching TV. Like, we are genuinely afraid of being together because I know where you've been all day, even though I saw the whole process you just went through. But I'm scared and you're scared. So we spend time together, but we are apart, across from each other, watching TV, sleeping in different rooms, because we don't, like, I just don't want to, because there's nothing out here that says that people like me are surviving this thing.
Yeah.
In fact, they're telling us that people like me
Hmm.
are first in line to die from it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's 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 hard, and the to think that we are coming up on 4 years of it, and it still is evoking. these emotions, like you're still reading the lyrics and you're moved to tears as if it's the first time you're reading it again,
Mhm.
it tells me, or it reinforces my belief in the fact that how this thing has affected us, we're going to continue to feel it for a very, very, very long time.
Mhm.
So going from that to, because I want us to talk about the impact that the pandemic, post-pandemic had on you as a person of Asian descent.
Mm.
What was that? What was it like to see that who you are, the thing
Mhm.
you cannot change about yourself,
Mhm.
is targeted, is 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 hated,
Yeah.
is a target of violence.
But
Like,
that's the thing that I was so again, it's just there was just a lot of anger because it could have been prevented.
yeah,
I just feel like gosh, like I just felt so much I don't even know what the right word is,
yeah,
but the fact that the government could have not used certain terms
yeah,
and focused more on bringing people together during an emergency rather
yeah,
than using it for their own political gain and their own political messaging was just so like eye-opening in a way. Like
yeah,
that kind of like blatant disregard
yeah.
exists for other people's, greater benefit.
Their
There's no
safety. My
reason
God.
to be saying the things that they were saying and knowing that it can affect how the world see, an Asian face, for example.
Yeah,
I was absolutely terrified. And it's like so weird because maybe right now I'm just so numb to like talking about it. But I really, if I put myself back in that place, I can't. But um there was definitely fear. There was definitely worry that what would happen to me. It's like you live in a world where in your head there's part of you that's prepared to fight back, which is
yeah,
such a weird thing, like to live in a
I know.
world where you call home, but like also have a defense
Yeah,
mechanism ready to
mechanism.
go.
Yeah.
If
Oh my
somebody tells me to go back to where I came from, how would I like easily respond to that?
God.
And would
Yeah,
I receive any kind of backlash from that too? But it's
yeah,
weird to think that like that was where your brain had to go. I would
yeah,
say that for the most part, I didn't really go anywhere during that time, so I felt fairly safe of it being in my own bubble and stuff like that. But seeing that that's how the rest of the world is starting to like turn or something against Asian and having this Asian hate, it was really scary.
yeah.
But yeah, it was scary. I was more scared about for my parents. And I was
I'm
also really
sure.
scared about like if, me and my mom were hanging out and we're speaking Vietnamese, like what would happen if,
Yeah,
are we going to be berated for doing that? But it's a mental toll that, living in the country that you live in and that you call home, and yet you're always kind of scared that someone will call you out and
yeah,
recognize that you technically don't belong here, I guess. And then being afraid of us too for, maybe we're the origin of COVID or whatever. Um, that was that was a lot of fear. And it's interesting too because I don't talk about that fear out loud to a lot of people, mainly because when I have, there would always be some form of invalidation of like, "Oh, but like that's nothing's bad's gonna happen to you. Like you don't be scared," kind of thing.
oh,
Um,
okay. I'll turn it off. What
yeah.
kind of statement is that?
Well, I think people are just trying to maybe make me feel less scared. I think the intention, again, like if you listen to my microaggression topic, the intention is not meant to hurt me or anything. The intention is to make me feel better. But it's also invalidating the fact that like hate is existing. It's such an
Yeah.
interesting conundrum of people not really believing that hate exists.
O-
And I don't quite
Okay.
understand how they could do that. I
Yeah. The reality of COVID was that people saw what they wanted to see about it. Some people believe in bits and pieces of it, And some people were completely oblivious to the reality and refused to accept the totality
Mhm.
of all of the ways that it exposed the ugliness in
Mhm.
people. It exposed the superhuman power of people's generosity and what that generosity has the power to do, like getting groceries for our elderly neighbor because she was
Mhm.
petrified of leaving her home. I'm like, I'm in jail too, don't worry, and I'm eating. We'll make sure you eat
That's
too.
amazing. Yeah.
Right. But like there were so many examples of that where people stepped in for neighbors that were elderly at their church, keep
Mm.
them at home. They were healthy. They were young, like what you were saying, and they had no risks. And they would mask up and wear gloves and go into Costco and go into all these places to stock up the elderly people in their church so they didn't have to
Yeah.
leave their home to be exposed. And so it exposed a lot of things to us about our communities, our friends, our families, that some of which were beautiful to see and some of which were very difficult to accept. Like when the vaccine came out, an uncle who smokes was concerned about being vaccinated because there's report out there that it has the risk of giving you cancer. Sir,
Yeah.
you smoke 2 packs a day.
Priorities.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna need you to not be a part of this conversation. I'm gonna need you to sit this one out, right? Like
Yeah.
people who put substances in their bodies where it is established that these substances will cause this are concerned about this other thing that has that has established to help us because you don't what? No. I need
Mhm.
you to sit this conversation out. Um, the other way that I think COVID was like directly when so the point where my fear and my sadness and I started crying a lot and I started struggling to get out of bed,
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
it came when the elective procedures were all canceled.
Yeah.
I was a person that was now so close to a transplant that I was getting my transplant labs every month. That's usually a trigger. You are right there because we went from once every 2 years, once a year, once every 6 months, once every 3 months. Now I was getting labs every month
Really
and
scary.
they
So your kidneys are
canceled.
getting worse. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's a sign that you're placed on the list.
Oh.
Like you're getting really, really close because what happens and how they make the call is whose labs do
Oh.
they have on file?
So you can tell that
You can
it's
tell
that,
preliminarily
but that
this
really, that breaks my heart so much.
girl, I was here like I'm once a month. That means like I am within a year of a transplant and they've canceled all elective procedures. I am going on the health department's website to see what is the definition of an elective. And sure enough, there was solid organ transplants. And I'm
Why
just
is
like,
that an elective? Why is that considered elective?
so kidney, pancreas are considered elective, heart transplants aren't. Right. So
Wow.
because there's a treatment modality to keep me alive, which is dialysis. So transplant is considered actually, even generally from an insurance billing standpoint, it is considered life bettering, not life saving. So an insurance company actually can choose not to cover a look at your face. I know it's a whole conversation. It's a whole thing. That is like a whole other world of how transplants are viewed versus dialysis.
I guess like
Medicare.
I guess you need to have a heart transplant, but there's like LVADs and stuff that you can use, to right. I mean, that's not long-term thing, but yeah.
So that's where we are.
Wow.
That's why kidney pancreas was listed clear as day on the list as elective procedures. And I got a call from the coordinator. This is definitely the case. And now I am like, how long? How long? How long? But
No.
they're not going to take you to the OR for a transplant without reserving an ICU bed. And guess what? We didn't have ICU beds. So I'm screwed. Even if I have a surgeon that says that they will do it, the law requires that an ICU bed be available or a post-surgical bed be available. And these were the first places that were completely booked. And now I'm waiting. They even asked me to not get my monthly labs because we weren't going anywhere for months.
That's heartbreaking.
It was like I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up. And this is why I say, like, Louis has saved my life. My dog, because he would come curl up next to me. He would just know that, like, he would just look at me with those eyes, and I'm like, okay, you want to go outside? That would get me out of bed. I'm like, Louis wants to go outside. Louis wants sunshine, or Louis wants outside time. And it's so true. Like the outside and stuff, like it helps emotionally. But by far, that was to me the thing that took me way down the toilet and I was struggling big time with. And when the vaccine came about, I was first in line because the transplant center said, we need you vaccinated to get this thing back up. I was first in line. I was like, nothing is getting in my way. And Lord and behold, by November, I got the call on November 7th that they
Nice.
had an organ available. So the pandemic was awful, but I also got my kidney in November of
Do you
2020.
know, like, if they had a kidney available, would they be able to keep that alive or like viable for a long time?
No.
Really?
Yeah, because one
So
of the
all that time when that everything was halted, it's just like you have to just get rid of the kidneys that you have
yeah,
available.
that's what I would assume happened because there
Oh wow.
no elective procedures were happening anywhere. And
Yeah,
we
it's
were
not like you can
listed
keep it on ice,
eyes, right?
defrost it.
Because even when the donor goes to the OR, that's when they make you NPO. They don't make you NPO after the organ is in-house, and because the time to revascularization of the organ is crucial to maintaining organ function in top shape. So the moment the donor goes to the OR, even if the kidney is coming from California and I'm in Baltimore, I become NPO at that point so that the moment the organ gets in the building, they can revascularize it as quickly as possible and we don't
Mhm.
have to wait. But I
I mean,
got a
talk about, I
blessing
mean, there's like a failure of, we just talked about the failure of medicine, but then there's also just like that miracle that that can exist
that can
in
exist
this
in the middle
country.
of all the chaos,
All the chaos and like
all the
having a
chaos.
process to be able to send a kidney from California all the way to Baltimore, like across the country,
That's the country.
and like have it available and viable for someone to accept. Like
Yeah,
that is such a miracle. Like
it's
what?
a, it's nuts. They came to my house to test me for COVID. They came, it was like a whole day of back and forth, back and forth. And they finally said, yeah, make your way to the hospital. Everything looks good. And I'm like, this is not happening. And I get to the hospital, I'm immediately like sequestered, like put into this room away from everyone. My husband can't stay with me through surgery. I'm in the hospital for 4 days and nobody, like I do this on my own. All of the post-surgical drama, the plasmapheresis, the IV, all of it. So it was like, this was my second transplant. And I remember my first transplant experience. My room was full of people, like my friends, like people were coming, people were dropping off pizza because for how many years I couldn't eat pizza. And everybody knew when I get my new kidney, the first thing I want is pizza. So everybody was coming with pizza, 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 and stuff. But this time, my sister was just ordering food. It would be delivered in the lobby. Security would bring it up. Nobody could come in. And the amount of ungodly doses of steroids that they put you on, I needed family, right? Like I needed because I was going stir crazy and the
Yeah.
migraines and
Oh
but
my
I was
gosh.
so blessed because
Yeah.
only 33,000 transplants happened in 2022, 2023. I mean in
Yeah.
2020. 33,000 and I was one of those
Yeah.
33,000. It's like in the middle of the world literally falling apart, my
Yeah.
life gets put back together in a big way.
Yeah. I mean,
Like it's just
there's a lot of miracles during that
emotionally,
time
it's
too. Yeah.
complex. It's complex.
It is complex. Yeah, it's so hard. And I mean that's I'm definitely holding back on how much I'm willing to feel for this recording because if I truly open up that box, like a lot of just emotions would come out. But yeah, like I talking about the miracles, we in the beginning of the pandemic or in the beginning of our waves, we would do that thing where we would line the hallway and celebrate, the first or the second or the third COVID patients leaving the hospital. It was just this like
Um,
really cool, just like this
yeah,
cute little thing that we would do just to celebrate those moments.
yeah.
And the nurse would wheel, the patient out
Vision.
and we would stand in the hallway and we would just like cheer and celebrate. I
Um,
mean, like the unity in that time was also just beyond anything I've experienced before, and that was really lovely. Talk about the vaccines too. We had vaccine clinics basically. I mean, they were created in a way that people could drive through it. So there was a
gotcha.
giant tent that was placed in a
Yeah.
big old parking lot at a conference, like a convention center. And we would have smaller tents for the pharmacists and the pharmacy group to draw up the vaccines. And then we would deliver that vaccine to whoever was administering it. And it was often some sort of military personnel or a nurse of some sort, but it was just so interesting. It looked like a military situation.
Base.
Yeah, it really kind of did. Because people were driving through and these people in uniforms, giving these shots and the way that they also interacted with pharmacists, they're also just so professional and like these big macho men. And I knew that that was something in history that I wanted to be a part of. And at the time, I
Yeah.
didn't think that I would get paid to be there because it was the health system that I was a part of. They were in charge of doing that.
Gotcha.
And I volunteered to be one of the first pharmacists to be able to help out in those tents. And then luckily they were able to make it so that I got paid for that as well. But I got to verify, how the vaccines were reconstituted and draw up and just kind of double checking
Yeah.
all of that and answering questions as needed. But there was a moment where, we were slowing down, like we had made enough to kind of like last for a while. And so I stepped out and I kind of looked out into the bigger tent. And the moment that I got really emotional was when I saw this like an older gentleman stepping out of his car to get his vaccine. It's like a
Oh,
grandfather or somebody just stepping out of the car, receiving that vaccine. And for me, that moment was just so beautiful
oh,
because it was something that can really prevent him from getting really sick
yeah.
and really ill. And it was just so beautiful to see that moment. It just, like, gave me
Yeah.
goosebumps when I saw it, and it got me emotional as I'm, like, peeking out of the pharmacy tent, and I saw
Yeah.
that, and I'm like, "This is what it was supposed to be all
To
about."
be.
This
Yeah.
emergency situation was supposed to bring people together
Yeah.
and save communities and, like, restore faith in people
Okay.
and restore health, and yet it was just a missed opportunity from the higher ups, right? But at the same time, there were glimmers of that humanity that exists through.
Yeah.
And for me, those are the moments that I choose to remember is those moments of triumphs in
Yeah.
um, human beings and humanity. And it was a really beautiful moment. And again, to go back to that first point of like, if you're in healthcare, if you're thinking about healthcare, or if you're already a pharmacist or whatever, there's a lot of, I talked to somebody recently that says a lot of pharmacists are leaving the profession.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that makes sense to me because if you're
Yeah.
in healthcare for the accolades and like the fanfare of it all, it doesn't
Mhm.
exist, or at least it
Nope.
doesn't exist long term. But if you are somebody who wants to show up for your community, you have
Yes.
this feeling of wanting to serve and the duty to your people,
Hmm.
then you should be in healthcare. And
You should.
that's the people that will continue to have the passion for it no matter how bad the system is. And
Yeah.
I will always remember those healthcare colleagues that went through that with me, and
Yeah.
it's just a magnificent journey in a
It
way
is. Yeah.
of
Um,
really showing up for everyone else and living that fulfilling dream that you get to
Yeah.
do that for your people. Yeah.
For the people. And I think as pharmacists, we love the fulfillment. We love living and practicing in our fulfillment zone when we do the stuff that makes us feel good. It's like the best part. Like, I love being in my space of, yes, intellectual capacity. Like, how do I do this? How does this work? What does it do? How does it do it? Yes, I show up for that. I know that that's expected of me, but it's when I help my patient figure out a strategy so that they remember to take their meds every day. Like I do an adherence thing. Like I help them make a small change that impacts their health. I help a nurse understand something about a medication that changes how she's going to practice moving forward. That fulfillment part, that's the best part for me about being a pharmacist, right?
Mm.
And I think one other part of the pandemic that I wanted to kind of ask your opinion about is its effect on education, its effect on pharmacy education, particularly. Did you precept during this season at all?
Oh my God. Honestly, that was like the least of my worries, to
Oh,
be honest with
yours?
you. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, not my problem. Like,
No,
we don't
I
have
was
time
like,
for
I
this.
can't.
I did precept 2 students,
Mhm.
but we then sent them home and I gave them a bunch of projects to do, which, you know, unfortunately, that was definitely a big missed opportunities for them too, because I think one of them, if they had stayed on that rotation with me, it was a transitional care rotation. If they had stayed for a while, they might have changed their minds about what kind of career they wanted to pursue because they were really doing really well, like thriving in that
Oh,
environment, like really enjoying the clinical aspect of pharmacy.
yeah.
And that was definitely unfortunate. I know that our residents at the time, they were going through, I mean, I don't know what it's like to be a resident during that time. I
Yeah.
mean, I would be curious to have somebody like give us their
I think
perspective of it. But I
I
mean,
was at mid-year.
a lot of it was just completely shut down.
Shut down. They feel
Yeah.
like I spoke to a few people at mid-year and I didn't think this. Like I didn't initiate the pandemic conversation, but some of the students, some of them that were students are applying to become residents now. And you know what they're insecure about? They're insecure about they think that the pandemic changed how they are educated. And the pandemic had a profound impact on them mentally and what they care about and what they value to the extent where they don't know that the type of residents they'll make will be good ones because of this. They are, one of them just plainly said, like, I am mentally exhausted. I have never had time to work through the impact that the pandemic had on
Yeah.
me. And I'm being asked now to step into this arena in this space where I need to perform at a level that I don't believe I can because mentally I am bankrupt. Emotionally,
Oh
I don't
God.
have the bandwidth. And I think I just want to take a year to work on myself and revisit things.
Wow.
And I told her that is the most mature thing I have ever heard anyone ever say. It is brave because many of them just feel like they're going to have FOMO. Like they have FOMO. Oh my God, if I don't do it this year, I can't do it ever. But the fact that you've self reflected and realized that the pandemic really messed you up and you need time to do this after you've worked on yourself a little bit and then see if residency really and truly is the way forward to do it. And I don't think that I thought about that at all, too.
I definitely did not.
Yeah,
I'm surprised to hear like that it took such a mental toll on her. I'm
yeah,
curious, like hopefully one day when she figures it all out, maybe she can give us an idea of what it is.
yeah,
But
yeah,
same here with me in the sense like I'm talking about the pandemic right now and I will never I don't think I'll know exactly how it's affected me until like one day it will come to me in like a
yeah.
dream or something, in a meditation of some sort.
And the meditate, we get a lot of good revelations in meditation. So,
Yeah,
I
but
love it.
I talked to, like I said, I talked to a therapist about this because around like 2021, 2022, when everything's opened back up and we're going back to normal life, I had a rough time readjusting my mindset to going back into normal society, I guess.
We all did.
And when I talked to my therapist, she was like, "Yeah, I mean, obviously you didn't really feel safe during the pandemic. You didn't feel supported." But I'm like, "But how did that affect me though?" Like I get that
Yeah.
I didn't feel safe and I think that yeah, but
Mhm.
how did it manifest in
Yeah.
in me and how I show up, you know?
Yeah.
But I would say that also the most positive thing that came out from that year was me feeling so hopeless all year long. Like me feeling like no one's supporting us as healthcare providers. No one believes us as healthcare providers. Everybody's just arguing. Like, I mean, if I can cuss, I would. Like, just arguing about the stupidest
Good thing.
stuff.
Meanwhile,
And
people are dying,
meanwhile,
FYI.
people are like laying in hospital beds. Our ICU's max capacity. We had to put
Yes.
2 patients in one ICU
One,
room. Like,
two.
talk about thinking about maybe converting a conference room into a
Yeah.
patient room. Like, what the
Yes.
F is wrong with you to be
Yes.
arguing out there about the stupidest stuff?
Yes. Yes.
And I was so angry, but I didn't know like how to but I didn't have a platform to speak up, or I didn't have any
Yeah.
way to speak up or anything. And I felt so hopeless. And I think feeling so hopeless for so long coming out of the pandemic, I was no longer wanting to just sit back anymore.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that the dream of making an impact in the world became stronger than
Yeah.
ever
Ever.
after the pandemic. I was no longer allowing something to just happen to me and I'm just going to sitting in my bedroom crying listening to Taylor Swift. Like I can still listen to Taylor
Hey,
Swift and cry, but I'm
that
going to
Taylor
do
Swift got
something
you through.
after.
Yeah.
She did. Shout out to Taylor.
Shout shout out to cousin Tay Tay.
Tay Tay, sponsor us.
Okay. It's multifaceted. I just think that every time it's New Year's and we're coming up on the anniversary, I reflect back on it and I think back about it and I'm like, that thing did a lot to us, but it also did some things for us. It helped a lot of us find our voices. It helped a lot of us realign and understand that, let me tell you, there are important things in your life beyond work, pay bills, and die. There are, I'm telling you,
Yes,
before the
please,
pandemic,
if you're listening to this podcast, there is more to life than work, pay bills, and die.
and die. It's like,
I hope that you know this.
I hope you know that. That's what COVID forced us to realize. Like, we care about more than just paying the bills and dying after it's all said and done. And if nothing else, I'm grateful for that eye-opening experience. Um, we had to rebuild. We had to reconnect after we got used to it. We got used to watching TV on separate couch. Like it became normal for it became normal for us. Whereas for years, we are cuddled up together watching TV. It didn't matter how small the couch was. Since pharmacy school, we are together watching. And suddenly it's like, okay, yeah, pass me a pillow, pass me that pillow. It's like, I'm like, this is not normal. I want to go back to like our normal stuff. This is
Yeah,
not it. Watching TV on separate couches and the laundry basket finally can come upstairs,
yeah,
But it's just we are still maskers in public. Um, it's just the other day, a girl I know, COVID, she lost her kidney. So I
oh
have these
gosh.
reminders, right? That I will forever have to be cautious if I'm in public. Like even at mid-year, I wore a mask when I'm in public spaces because it has different
Hmm.
implications for me and I need to not be naive about that and be um I'm invincible. No, you're delusional. I need to not be delusional
There are
about
things that you can be delusional about, and then there are
delusional.
things that you shouldn't take a chance, like your life.
This is not one of the times where I can be in my Delulu era and be happily living. If I'm in public spaces where there are a bunch of people, I need to wear a mask. I need to wear a mask going to Costco and going to the grocery store. That is what normal looks like for me. I need to be comfortable with that. And that is a post-pandemic thing.
Yeah.
And I'm
Uh,
okay.
I mean, post-pandemic, oh, I just thought of something too. It completely Oh, you know what? Okay. Post-pandemic wise, for me, I've always been the person that's like, no, I want to listen to everybody's point of views and I want to understand why people think the way that they think. And politically, I lean liberal, but I'm actually a very moderate person just because I can understand why the other side believes something. And
Feels.
just
Yeah.
in general, what the pandemic has taught me was that arguing and being so contentious with each other was so unproductive. And for
Yes.
me, I think that's how I created this brand that I have now, which is Empowered Farm D, is approaching everything in a very compassionate and empathetic way. And I hope to continue to do that, is to talk about a hard topic, but really
Yeah.
bringing people together too. And that was something that I thought was such a failure on all these leadership aspects. And I'm hoping to be able to have tough conversations, but in a loving way. And
Yeah.
everyone can do that. 'Cause
Everyone
at
can.
the end of the day, I want to
You
see
can
visible
teach them
progress.
too. I
Yeah.
think that's gonna be great. Like for you to show them and teach them. I just we are exhausted. Like I don't know if you're a Gen Z or a millennial, but like we are exhausted. Like I let me now weed this in. Okay.
Yeah,
I
like me
am
too.
exhausted. Okay. I am exhausted. Like I 9/11, COVID, the real estate market crash, the like can we
Yeah.
list out all of the different ways that me as a millennial have had to recalibrate, have had to reset, have had to reconfigure how I move forward, how I exist in life, and how all these things have happened before I am even a mother to say that I'm going to teach my kid about this is how you do it. Like, I feel bad for my kid because the things I'm going to tell him, it's like, you got to be good with your money. You got to plan for paying for your education. You got to, too many things have happened to me as a millennial where my concerns for what I want and want to give my son are going to be really different from what my parents had. My parents had one goal in life, and that was superior education. You're going to have a good education so you can be a productive member of society. I have so many more dreams for my son than that.
Like what?
It's so much bigger than that because I feel like I'm going to tell him your education is only going to do but so much. I need you to think bigger, expose yourself to more so that the education can be the ground floor.
Mm.
But how you view and see not just your environment, but the world is how you are going to be able to transcend whatever life circumstances are going to be. I
Wait,
have to teach him more.
do you think that that is a perspective that happened because of the pandemic and everything that's went on, or you've always had this, right?
No, no, no. I think that I've been changed by these events.
Wow, really?
I really have.
I can understand that. Yeah.
I've been
Wow.
changed by these events. Like to come out of pharmacy school with this massive loan, that changed my perspective on how to go about pursuing superior education, right? It's made a goal for me to give my son a debt free life. I don't want him to have debt as a result of education. And that's as a result of what's happened, right? Like the pandemic, them pausing student loans repayment and me seeing how much I was able to save as a result of no student loan payment, ridiculousness. Ridiculousness. And it angered me. It angered me that this is how much money in all of the times that I have my payments been frozen that I've been able to accrue from one bill, one. So that makes me want more for him with respect to how much debt is going to be acceptable debt, if at all,
Oh, wow.
as a result of education.
This
But
is this is a
yeah,
fascinating thing that you're bringing up because my mind has been changed so much too because of the pandemic.
yeah, yeah,
So I'll give you an example. Um, oh my gosh. So when we were being furloughed and I mentioned this the conversation in the elevator
yeah,
with a doctor, he was like, yeah, many people may lose their job because we don't have patients, like there's no surgery, yada yada. And that was the first time in my head that it clicked that in order for me to have a job, people have to be sick.
Oh my God.
And
What a thought.
I was in the elevator talking to this man who's like really scared for his future. I'm like, and I said this to him. I was like, yeah, it is strange for us to be in a profession where you have to have patients to make money. And I said that the first time I've ever even thought that in this elevator. And my mind was, I blew my own mind.
It was a mind
I
blowing
was like, wow,
reckoning.
I'm profound. Anyone else hear that? And the guy was just like, yeah, okay, whatever.
That was rather profound. Like,
Look at me. I should be a podcaster.
I cannot. But like, I'm so serious. If you sit down and you really think about all of the different things that have happened, like for me as a millennial, I have things what I want to give my son or a little different. Like I will encourage my son to be very entrepreneurial and very have a disruptive thought, a disruptive mindset. No matter where you are, what industry you're in, I need you to be thinking about what is the possibility for disruption here,
But he's your
because
son. He will have that on
no,
like DNA wise. It's gonna be
yes,
embedded in him. I mean,
like,
if you look at my parents, right? Like people are surprised that I'm like going this entrepreneur route, but I'm like, my parents, little old Vietnamese people, not they weren't old, but like these Vietnamese folks from, middle of Vietnam decided to move to America for a
yeah,
better life, came here with no money, and guess what? Now they are these thriving members of society,
yeah,
not knowing the language, not knowing anything. I mean, talk about entrepreneurship, like that is embedded in my DNA.
it is.
There's
It's
just no way that I can like escape that. And so your son is going to have that in his blood. Like it's probably already running through him.
you give me hope. You give me hope. You give me hope because it's just it's it revealed so much about the things that I did. Was I was gonna go to work, like if I want to go on a trip, I'm just gonna do one OT here, another OT there, and that it's like now if I want to go on a trip, I'm not doing math three times. See ya. I'm out of here. Goodbye. I'll see you when I come back.
Peace.
Don't look
The
for me for the next 2, 3 weeks. I'm out of here.
the other thing
But
that really changed. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish
oh
your thought.
no, that was it. Like it's just I don't think 2, 3, 4 times anymore to just dip. I'm out.
Yeah, this is my time. B words. Um so the other thing that really changed my mind, that the pandemic has really changed the way that I view my life and just my worldview, was the whole furlough situation. That was in itself pretty traumatic, and I'm glad that I got that experience because now I know what to expect when my job is not as stable and how to, protect myself from that. But we had gone through, a couple of waves of the pandemic already, but the hospital was still losing money because of just the way that they were handling the situation in the beginning. They lost so much money that it took a lot of effort to even make some of that back. And so they had to scale back. And I remember sitting in my office one day and I got a knock on the door. I opened the door and it was one of my managers at the time. And she's like, I just want to let you know that I got laid off. I got let go. And if I had like known, I would never have guessed that. Only because this woman
Wow.
had been with the company for 30 something years.
Stop.
Goes into work every freaking day, like so excited to be here. Energy, like off the roof. Like people look at her and we're like, oh my God, can you be quiet? It's like 6 in the morning.
What?
Gets in an elevator, talks to everybody, knows everybody, been in that, not just company, but hospital for 30 something years, about to retire, close to retirement, by the way. Gets laid off because they no longer think that she benefited the company. And again, here I am, right? Like sitting in my freaking office being like, I'm so loyal to this company. I'm going to work here forever because that's what everybody was around me was doing. And for me to see them so carelessly, just, I mean, I'm sure it's not careless, but just so like callously, I guess, just like,
Yeah.
we don't need you
Dispose
anymore.
of
You're
her.
done. Disposing of somebody who not just like is about to retire, but someone who loved
What
that
they
place
did. Yeah.
and was for me a model employee only because of the commitment and the fervor that she brought to that job. Like everybody else goes to work and we're like dead, and she comes in like freaking bouncing into her work, and we're like, what? You know, she was the type that like drank the freaking Kool-Aid, you know, but they let her go because they no longer needed her. And that experience taught me to not be so reliant on this employer.
Yeah.
And that's why I did pursue entrepreneurship as well, is because I wanted to know what it's like to build my own brand and to have
Yes.
my own, just my own thing that I can
Yes.
really work on.
Yes.
At the end of the day, that intellectual property is mine. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
And
Oh,
I
you're
had to learn
speaking
that
it.
very much the hard way of
Ah,
seeing it going happening to somebody else, like a couple of years out of retirement.
man,
Like that's heartless.
that's
And just like put
wild.
her somewhere else. You know what I mean? If you don't need her anymore, like put her in a different position. But to
It's like,
just say we
just
don't need
find
you
something for
anymore.
her to do.
Yeah, just
Just,
find her something else for the next couple of years. Jesus, like come on.
oh
But
man,
to
it's
do that to
real.
somebody,
Like, no, 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 no. I feel like it's taken me a little while too, but again, the pandemic. y- Reconcile. The pandemic is when Resi Prep came out of the shadows. Yeah. 2020, it was, I think in June 2020, that's when my LinkedIn page for Resi Prep was created and I made my first post. Until then, from 2018, no, from 2017 to 2020, I'd been working with candidates quietly, very incognito. Just,
yeah,
what I
yeah.
did existed nowhere out in the world. Resi Prep became out and like, wait, that's you? You do that? Wait, you and that are the same? I'm like, yeah. Uh-huh. People that I've worked with for years, that I've known for years, had no clue that I did this after work. I went home and worked on this stuff on weekends and did this and did this and did Zoom workshops and all this stuff. No clue. Right. So, yeah, it's affected me negatively. It had negative effects, but some of those things have helped me find the courage to do a lot of what I'm doing now because it showed me that I do have more power than I think. And again, I'm just not in it to work, pay bills, and die. I'm done. We're retiring that lifestyle now.
Yeah, better late than never,
Yeah.
honestly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, gosh. In
Oh,
a way,
see?
I am grateful that I got this experience
Yeah.
despite a lot of pain from it as well. And
Yeah.
wow, yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
That's our pandemic, guys. Like, and like or the reason why I really wanted to do this or have this conversation,
Yes.
it's because I knew that there's pain there. I just knew because we were affected very differently by it. Like I was pretty much in COVID jail. I was at home. Couldn't go
Hmm.
nowhere. You were out there. You were in the trenches with it. But emotionally, all of what happened to us, it facilitated a lot of where we are right now. And if we think about it and deeply reflect on it and the impact it's had, COVID's signature is on so many things in what
Yeah.
I'm doing now and in my life, like how I leverage technology. I learned all that during COVID. It's like Zoom,
Downloaded
actually
Snapchat.
getting a Zoom account and Google Meets, Microsoft Meets, like all these different platforms, Calendly, all these different, these were all remnants of the pandemic and learning that I can connect with candidates across the country. I'm not limited to just the schools in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, which is what I've been doing forever. but they're talking to their friends in Louisiana. They're talking to their friends in all these other states. And they're like, do you help students from this side? Do you? And I'm like, oh, work is asking me to do this Zoom thing. I wonder if I can pay for Zoom and start talking to people that live in California and other places. So
Nice.
it opened up our minds for the better or for worse. But I think that I'm just really proud of us for not giving up. I don't
Yeah.
think anyone would have blamed us for just saying, okay, enough. I'm just going to step away from all of it.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of us for pushing through it and following that journey and discovering things about ourselves that are going to continue to
Yeah.
serve us really, really well into the future.
But I mean, it sounded like too, we really embrace our pain and our negative experiences into something that cultivated into beautiful beginnings as
We
well
did. We
and
did.
motivate us to do a lot. I mean, I'm speaking out about things because I didn't have a chance to speak out during the pandemic, and I just don't want to lose that opportunity anymore. And I hope that people who are just like, pandemic was horrible, I'm just going to pretend it never existed. Like, maybe there is an aspect that you can learn from it and grow from it too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad that it wasn't as emotionally charged as I thought, because I didn't want to be crying and be incoherent this entire
Oh,
time
dude.
because
Dude,
yeah,
you're okay. This is a safe space.
I
I
know.
would have just cried with you, and then that would have
We were just
normalized.
crying together.
And then they're listening like, okay,
Can
at
they
some point,
stop?
can they?
They
Because
skip.
I just want to get to school. I just want to get to work and not be boohooing either. So can
Yeah.
we? But
But
yeah,
so many amazing things happen. So yeah. Wow, 4 years. That's a long time.
a long time.
I turned
And it's still fresh in our
31
mind.
that year, and I celebrated by myself, but someone a friend of mine brought me a cupcake, and I had like a candle for my 30th birthday. So then it was like the 3, and then I had to find like a 1, which was just like a regular candle, and then I did like an Instagram live.
Did you?
I was like, I'm blowing out my cupcakes for my birthday. It was like the height of the first wave that we had, which I didn't even
Wow.
really get into, but yeah, we it was my first Instagram live ever. Random people showed up. I was like so nervous.
Look at that. Because what were we all doing at
Yeah,
home on Instagram?
I know.
That's what we were all doing. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
some girl named Thu is live. Oh, I wonder
Might
what
as well
she's doing.
watch, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so funny.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to
That
this?
is it.
Yeah.
Thank you. This
Yeah.
was actually fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, we got to really dive into the pandemic in a lot of different ways. So that was
Different
really
ways.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, I hope that everyone listening at home also really enjoyed it, and let us know. Oh, I forgot my whole like spiel at the beginning. Oops. Um, but let us know in the comment below, how did the pandemic affect you? And if
yeah.
you were a student at the time, please let us know how it affected you and whether or not you felt like you needed that break. Because I didn't expect the mental toll to be so strong on
Yeah.
students.
Mhm.
All right. Well, with that
Mhm.
said, thank
Yeah.
you so much for listening. If this episode speaks to you and you think that others may benefit from hearing our stories, send this episode to them. This will help us reach way more people.
Yeah. This episode is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. You can connect with me or Thu individually on all of the social media platforms, but also our Hey RX Friends Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube page. Please, 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 please follow us, like, rate, comment, engage with us. This is how you let us know that you are still with us, but also you help make the show discoverable for other people. We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, don't forget, we got
We got this.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.